For an air of drinking sophistication from a selection of over 1,500 bottles, it's no-brainer where you need to be. And that's the Whisky Brother Bar.
We're currently celebrating, being amongst the top 20, best retailers in the Small Business Awards in South Africa. And the award, just recognizes what we stand for as Whisky Brother, because we are all about educating the South African, whiskey enthusiasts and the newcomers into the whiskey category on the different whiskeys that are out there, because we try and have a selection that is not being brought in by everyone. We bottle single cask whiskeys every year. Last year we did about 20 different single casks, and as we speak right now we're sitting on about 18 single casks. We might actually top what we did last year. So it's all about that. And from 2017, we built a bar. That's where we are right now, to try and give the South African whiskey consumer a wider selection of whiskies that they can enjoy. And then we recently expanded the shop in Hyde Park, and now it includes other drinks, because we realize that the whiskey drinker doesn't just drink whiskey alone. They drink gin, they'll drink wine, but we've got more of a curated selection. We've got mezcal, because you might be a whiskey drinker, but you will drink something else. At the current moment, we are standing in a bar that has got a selection of over 1,500 whiskeys that you can try. For you to say that you can't find something that works for your palate, I think that's going to be very difficult. I think it gets overwhelming for someone when they walk in here, because you might find you're just used to the few name brands that we come across in magazines or billboards, and then you walk in here and you see such a selection of whiskey. I think it becomes difficult for you to actually know where to start. But luckily, the guys that are behind the bar are there to guide you, because all the guys that we have in our team, they are passionate about what they do. They are whiskey enthusiasts themselves. The first thing that they will usually ask you is, what do you enjoy? And then from there, they will tailor the tasting according to what you enjoy, or they will select bottles according to what you enjoy. And they will even surprise you with something that's off the beaten track, so that they can expose you to something else that you haven't tried yet. It's not about the drink itself, it's about the lifestyle. And the glassware that we use as well enhances the whole drinking experience. Because the traditional tumbler usually doesn't do justice to whiskey. But then if you find the right glassware, the experience just becomes something else. Personally, I enjoy, either the peated whiskies or just sherry cask matured whiskies, because they've got that warm feeling that they give off. For instance, something like this, this has been exclusively matured in Oloroso sherry cask. So you're getting more of those deep dried fruits, the likes of dates, prunes, and then the spice then comes through. You're getting more of your clove, your ginger, nutmeg kind of spice. Some people will tell you that this actually reminds them of Christmas cake. So it's a big whiskey, and if you could get something like this, especially if it's bottled as a single cask whiskey, then you will get the whiskey coming through at cask strength without dilution, and then it tends to be more flavorful. Some people might think just because a whiskey is coming at cask strength, then the whiskey is going to be too strong, which is actually the opposite. The whiskey actually carries flavor a lot better at cask strength, because when you find a bottle of whiskey at 40-30%, it's already been diluted down for you. But here you're getting the whiskey in its truest form. And then you can then choose to dilute it whichever way you enjoy it, either by adding a splash of water or adding a block of ice. Oddly enough, we actually have a lot of ladies that enjoy whiskey because whiskey is a gender neutral drink. People will try and want to make you think that whiskey is an old gentleman's drink or it's just for men. But whiskey is enjoyed by everyone. There are ladies that will drink peated whiskey. Peated whiskey will make some men, just run the opposite direction, because peated whiskeys will sometimes smell medicinal. So whiskey is more of an individual thing. So whether you're a woman or a man, you have to enjoy whiskey whichever way you want, because whiskey is for everyone.
Still with the Whisky Brother Bar, here's a tutorial on how to drink your whiskey the right way.
Right, people. So now we're going to talk about whiskey etiquette, how to enjoy your whiskey. I can't tell you when to enjoy your whiskey because you drink whiskey at whatever, time you like. But personally, I would have 1 or 2 whiskeys, after dinner. And the best glass for me would be something like this. This is called the Glencairn glass. The wider bottom helps air circulate into the bottom of the glass and then draws out the aromas of your whiskey to the top of the glass, where now you have the narrow top. This is where then we nose the whiskey from. So we will nose whiskey, and then from there, we will consider the color of the whiskey, because the color of the whiskey tells us a little bit about where the whiskey sat during maturation. And unlike, a shooter, you sip whiskey. You don't shoot it back, because you want to appreciate the flavors that are in the whiskey. And now we're going to talk about the traditional whiskey glass or the tumbler. This is mainly used, when you want to add ice to your whiskey. And then the downside to using this glass is that you do not get to nose your whiskey properly. And once you add ice, the whiskey actually closes up, and then you're not getting, the full aromas of your whiskey. So the problem here is not water or dilution. The problem is temperature. Ice will shock the whiskey, but when you add a splash of water, what you're basically doing is you're letting the lighter nuances that were being masked by the alcohol to come through, to shine. So water is good for your whiskey, and ice not so much. But so we will consider the color of the whiskey, because the color of the whiskey tells us about where the whiskey sat during maturation. This particular whiskey was exclusively matured in Oloroso sherry casks, and those casks will usually be red oak casks, and they give off more of the darker color into the whiskey. And that also depends on how many times the cask has been used, because the more the cask gets used, the less color it will give off to whiskey. Some whiskeys that will come matured in American oak casks, these tend to have more of that golden straw or honey color, because white oak does not have the amount of tannin that you get from red oak. So the color of the whiskey sometimes becomes a problem to new whiskey drinkers, because when they find a whiskey looking this light, they will not buy it because they are used to the darker whiskeys. But the interesting thing is that there is a caramel colorant that is permitted in whiskey production, and that is used mainly to keep consistency in color between batches. This is some single malt scotch that was exclusively bottled for this establishment. limited to 576 bottles and bottled at a beautiful 58.9%. So we are tasting, so we're not gonna pour too much. And I mean, it's whiskey. The goal is not to finish the whole bottle. The goal is to enjoy the whiskey. You know, have a conversation with your glass. Sip, savor, enjoy the whiskey. Nose the whiskey. You know, let those aromas take you back to your childhood or wherever, you know, because certain whiskey aromas or certain aromas in our lives, you know, will invoke certain memories, you know. So nose the whiskey. What is it that you're picking up that you're familiar with? You know, you don't really need to use very big words. You know, are there any fruits that you're picking up? Is there any toffee? Is there any vanilla? Is there any honey? What is it that you're familiar with? You know, and then from there, you know, you're gonna take a sip. Move the whiskey around your mouth because different parts of your mouth will pick up different flavors. And then the texture of the whiskey is also very important when it comes to tasting whiskey. So we will consider the texture of whiskey when we're tasting whiskey. And then lastly, the finish. How long does that whiskey last in your mouth after you've swallowed? You know, does it linger longer? Does it have a long finish? Does it have a medium finish? Or does it just disappear? You know, from just looking at those glass, you know, you can see the whiskey is actually clinging to the sides of the glass. That tells you a lot about the viscosity of the liquid. So right now, I actually know that once I take a sip, this whiskey is just gonna coat my palate, and then it's just gonna linger, you know. Cheers. And remember, drink responsibly.